SoCal Filipinos presents Creative Spotlight, brought to you by Tap Tap Send. With Reimagined Volume II, Mahal, featuring director, writer, producer Michaela Ternasky-Holland, voice of Hanan and Yatco, voice of Catalonan, Eileen Descallar, vocalist Atreo. Please welcome your host, Jhenice Villanueva.
Good evening and welcome to tonight's Creative Spotlight, sponsored by Tap Tap Send. Looking to send money to the Philippines? Tap Tap Send has you covered. No fees, great rates, and fast transfers. Download the app and enter the code word SoCal to receive an additional $20 on your first transaction. My name is Jhenice Villanueva, your host for tonight. We are in for a treat today as we get to talk to the team behind the animated VR feature Reimagined Volume II, Mahal. Before we get started, let's play a preview of Reimagined Volume II, Mahal.
We love you, Tatay.
We wish you were still with us.
We think of you all the time.
New eyes do watch over us.
Please light the buwan and guide it.
What if the darkness returns? I have to be ready.
I light it by myself so you can ignore your responsibility to this family.
I need to protect this family.
You're drowning in your own fear, Mayari.
Why is the mundo more important than us?
Look out!
See how their heartbreak bleeds. We miss you. Mahal ka namin.
Wow, this VR project that you just watched is making its world premiere at the Tribeca Film Festival starting on June 7th. I have the privilege of speaking with some of the team members behind Reimagined Volume II, Mahal. So today we have Michaela Ternasky-Holland, who is the director, writer, and producer. Welcome, Michaela. And then we also have Yatco, voice of Hanan, goddess of the dawn in the morning. Welcome, Yan. And then we also have Eileen Descallar, voice of Catalonan. Welcome, Eileen. And last but not least, we also have Atreo, who is the vocalist. Welcome. Good evening, everyone. Thank you all for joining us this evening on SoCal Filipinos.
Thanks for having us.
Happy
to be here.
And happy Memorial Day weekend as well, right?
Mhm.
So, all right. Well, let's go ahead and take a moment to get to know each of you. We want you guys to tell us and our audience just a little bit about yourself. And Michaela, we'll start with you if that's okay.
Sure, yeah. So I'm a mixed race Filipino American. I actually lived in California most of my time growing up. Then I went to school down at UC Irvine and I performed at Disneyland. So I'm a huge fan of Southern California. I currently reside in New York, which is the land of the Nape Canarsie people. And moving to New York was a big step for me because I really wanted to explore the ability to tell stories that were really equitable and allow people to really choose how they felt about the story versus what I was trained in more traditional journalism was very specific to like, you are trying to kind of like tell somebody a message about something. And it also felt very redactive and a little exploitive to a lot of the non-mainstream communities whose stories were being told. And so I went down this journey of telling more immersive, interactive nonfiction stories. And I'm very comfortable telling nonfiction stories using mediums like virtual reality and augmented reality and even a little bit of artificial intelligence. But Reimagined Volume II Mahal is really my first foray into like a truly narrative driven experience. And it was a really vulnerable process for me. And I'm just so lucky and honored that these incredibly talented Filipinos and Filipino Americans like Anne and Eileen and Travis came and really bolstered this effort with their talents. And so, yeah, I'm really excited to be here today. And that's a little bit about me.
You got it. Thank you. Appreciate that, Michaela. And I'm definitely going to ask about this whole VR world of animation, which is definitely new to me. When I think of VR, I think of the games, right, that we play, video games, but to actually see it as an animated feature, completely new. So we'll get into that in a little bit. All right, next, let's go to Anne. Anne, if you can do a little introduction of you.
Yeah, hi. I'm Filipino. Both of my parents immigrated from the Philippines, but I was born in the States. We moved around a lot when I was growing up, but we mainly landed in Illinois. So I'm a good Western girl, you know? But growing up, I was a performer all the time, but I was also focused on my studies. You know, my parents wanted me to get good grades, get into a good college, become a doctor. And so I was fully prepared to do that until I suddenly wasn't. But I have a degree in biomedical engineering and then switched gears and went to Cal Arts and got my MFA in acting. So that's brought me out to Southern California. And then when I needed to pay my bills, I found a job as a forensic scientist for 7.5 years. All the meanwhile, I was acting. I was doing theater. I was doing improv, sketch comedy, voiceover, and building my voiceover career slowly but surely. And I have since left my day job and have been able to work full time as a voice actor, knock on wood. But I'm lucky to be in stuff like Genshin Impact and Jujutsu Kaisen and Mahal, which is so cool to be a part of a piece that really speaks to like who we are. Because you don't really get to see our stories told that often on screen, and it's a joy to be able to do that, to take part in something like this.
Absolutely, you're right. We read about it in books, right? Even if that, like, we have to research it, right? It's not something that they cover in school in your history, unless you took a Filipino studies class, and maybe they would touch on that a little bit. So to have something like this to educate not only Filipinos, but just everyone, right, is amazing. And again, just great insight into our culture and who we are. And for going from forensic to VO, talk about a complete 180. I'm glad it's working out really well for you. That's wonderful.
Thank you.
Of course. All right, next we'll go to Travis. Travis, let us get to know you a little bit.
Yeah, absolutely. So my name's Travis. I've been an artist for about 15 years now, and I've been fully independent. I'm Filipino American. I was born Subic Bay, and then we came to the U.S. when I was like 2 years old on like a military cargo plane. And then we lived in the Midwest in Iowa for a little bit and moved around, but I grew up mostly in Seattle, Washington. And then I moved to Los Angeles in 2013. And I've just been here being a musician and released a bunch of covers on YouTube. And this year I'm focused on releasing a country album, but I'm so excited to be able to be a part of Mahal and to be able to lend my vocals to this super important and amazing story. So shout out to Michaela and the whole team for having me. I'm just so honored.
That's wonderful to have vocalists such as yourself and a country vocalist nonetheless as well. So that's super exciting. We'll talk about that a little bit during the interview too. All right, and last but not least, we've got Eileen. Eileen, let's get to know you a little bit.
Hello. So I'm not new to SoCal Filipinos. I met Jason in Clubhouse back in the early days. So
COVID, right? The COVID days?
Yeah, the COVID days.
Okay.
It birthed so many things. My background is a little bit of acting, but there was a lot of, I was a business econ major, that I switched to English major. I'm a marketing professional, graphic design, photography background, but I went back to performing because it's just so wonderful. And times have changed, right? So when I started, there wasn't, SoCal Filipinos, obviously, but there also wasn't a chance to study anything in school, not even the language, Mm-hmm. So this opportunity just happening, like, to come up, it's just so perfect. And I feel like there's so many ties, like Anne's talking about how she went to a different career first. My parents definitely steered me a certain way, even though I did go to performing arts school for a year, but but coming back into it and being able to say, look what I'm in now, I think that makes them look at things differently. And even though I worked in entertainment marketing I worked for big clients like the studios, but even when I was there, they didn't quite understand it. They would say, or are you going to be discovered? Like, no, I'm on the corporate side. I'm not going to be that way. So the concepts were like one or the other, right? You're going to become a doctor or you become an accountant, which I was on that road for a while. And, I do my own taxes. So, but then to now shift to this, we're like, oh, it's so nice that you're doing this. They don't fully understand it. And I still have my day job. Way to go, Anne, by the way. But my parents came over from the Philippines. They're both the first from their family. They met in Seattle, Washington. There's another tie. Oh. My dad likes country music, by the way. and I was born in California, so I'm a native Californian. I live in Ventura, but I grew up in LA County. And I went gangbusters into voiceover during the pandemic, but I had a background in audiobooks before then. So you can't keep the performer away from the Filipinos. That's what I say.
It's a natural thing, right?
It's right.
It's just part. It's like part of our bloodline.
And I play instruments. Like that's the other thing, right? You have to instruments and karaoke and all that stuff too.
All together. I know. I did piano. I did the organ, but I'm sure with all you guys, I probably learned a certain instrument while you guys are growing up or so. But no, that's wonderful. Well, thank you guys again. We're so grateful to have all of you here. Such talented individuals. You guys are doing a lot of different things, but again, coming together for this feature, which is going to be seen at Tribeca Film Festival in a couple of weeks here. Now, before we go down that road, tell us a little bit about virtual reality, that world to our viewers, for those who may not necessarily be familiar with it. I know we have a lot of young members in our audience who are familiar with it, but we have also others who just not. So I'm not sure, Michaela, if you want to talk about that a little bit.
Sure. So the best way I like to describe virtual reality is like you live in a physical reality. So you live in this world where you get up every day, you get out of bed, you put on clothes, you make yourself breakfast, and maybe you get on like public transportation, or maybe you get in your car, and you're moving constantly through this physical reality. And the physical reality is giving you a feedback loop, right? Like you're constantly seeing people, you're constantly learning new things, you're constantly being given information that helps you get better and better and better. You didn't just come out of your you didn't just like come out of kindergarten knowing how to be a high school student, right? And so I liken the physical reality very similar to the digital reality. So if you have an email, if you have a social media, if you're on your laptop right now watching this live stream, you are a part of the digital reality, right? And just like in the physical reality, there's a constant learning process that happens. And some people are really advanced in the digital reality, and some people are just starting out. And that's totally fine, because you'll always learn something new, right? Like I remember the first time I stumbled on platforms like Slack or project management platforms like Notion or like Asana. And those were a whole different learning curve for me to learn about the digital reality. But I had been, texting on my cell phone since I was like in 8th grade using like T9, back in the day. And so this digital reality is continually to grow and expand. And one of the ways it's continuing to grow and expand is to make itself feel more immersive and more interactive. And so I also liken this to going to the beach, right? Like sometimes when you're in the beach, you just want to put your toes in the water. That would be like someone who's like, I just look at my emails. I just look at my text messages. I don't really do anything else, right? And someone who goes a little deeper might be like an online gamer. They're like on a Discord and they're talking to friends, or, someone who's on Amazon Prime constantly buying things in the digital reality, and then they show up in your physical reality. You're getting deeper and deeper into the ocean at that point. Virtual reality is literally just like the moment you decide to dunk yourself fully in the ocean and totally decide to be surrounded by the digital reality. It's a physical headset you actually wear on your face, and it basically totally removes the physical reality from your eyes and puts in a full digital reality into your eyes. So if you look to the right side of you, you'll see what is over on the right side of you, just like you would in a physical reality sense. If I look to the right, I see a wall. If I was in virtual reality and I was in the middle of Mahal, if I looked to the right of the Catalonan, I would see the villagers sitting around her, listening to her story, right? So in the same way that we in the physical reality, we interact with things through spatialization by actually looking and touching and feeling things, virtual reality is trying to be as similar to the physical reality, but in the digital sense. So that's the easiest way I can describe it. But if you have any other follow-up questions that I can help like clarify even more, I'm more than happy to clarify more.
Absolutely. No, I appreciate that explanation. And she's right. For those of you watching this interview, if you guys have any questions, please jot them down in the chat and we'll bring up your questions for this team. Yeah, so VR, I know that's new to me also. I remember during COVID time, right, that the Oculus and all of that stuff, that was a thing that was just starting to become really popular. So to put it on, and you're right, you're in this, you have to adjust in that moment, but it's amazing because it's as if you are truly there, like you are part of the game or the feature, right? And it's so fun. So if you haven't done it, try it. Definitely highly recommend it. So, and then Michaela, how did you get into VR films in the first place?
It's a great question. So again, like I was really focused on more equitable storytelling, and I felt like 2D storytelling using photos and videos and audio were all really great, but there was still a very clear framing that was happening that I was seeing. There was a lot of like anthropological, colonialist, imperialist mindset in traditional journalism that could be just used by who you cropped out of the frame of a photo, right? And I was like, well, I don't want journalism to hide behind what they can and can't edit. I want journalism to be fully like exposed. So if you were in the middle of a scene, you can fully expose everything that's happening, not just X and Y perpetrator, but also A and B, C, like witnesses, right? And so I really wanted to create journalism that was more equitable. And so I started using 360 cameras actually in Irvine. One of my first 360 videos was actually with Kaba Modern, because I used to dance with Kaba Modern down at UCI, and I had them do like a 360 dance performance around this camera, and it was the first time I really utilized like my choreography skills and my dance skills to really say like, let's make something no one's done before, a 360 dance music video. And from there I started playing with like journalism. And so slowly but surely I got more and more invested in these mediums that are emerging technologies, not just VR, but also augmented reality and artificial intelligence, realizing that they're just tools, right? Like we can use them for good and we can use them for bad, just like any creative medium. And I wanted to use those tools for good. And so really was using them for social impact, for journalism. And then, I always loved animation growing up. I'm a huge Disney and Pixar fan. And one of my dreams was to see a Filipino animated experience. And in my medium, I was like, well, why not a VR animated Filipino experience? And that was like one of my dreams come true to make Mahal happen. So, yeah.
So, and is this your first project as a VR feature?
It's a great question. So I actually did a short film called Lutao, which is a piece that I did with the Yellow Boat of Hope, which is a nonprofit in the Philippines. And that was actually my first ever VR animated short about the Philippines. But, just like when you work in social impact, there's a lot of ethical things that were going on. And I was like, well, I don't want Filipinos just to be seen as like these people who live in poverty. Like I want us to be seen as these like incredible deities and gods and goddesses and like how all powerful we are. I mean, just even listening to this cast talk about all their multi-hyphenate forms, like is so inspiring. And I was like, I want people to also see us in that way. And so I wouldn't say this is my first VR animated film. I've done an animated film before. I've done a lot of VR films before, but this would be like the first VR animated film that I wrote and directed and produced, because this is the first time I've ever done like a fictionalized script. Yeah.
That's wonderful. Such an accomplishment, right? I mean, where do you go from here at this point? So they're very exciting. And we'll get some questions to the rest of the group here, but one more. Tell us about Reimagined Volume II, Mahal. I know this story you hold very close to you, right? It's very personal for you. If you can let our audience know and give us a little background on it.
Okay. I don't want to take up too much space, so I'm going to try and make this as brief as possible. Growing up as a mixed race Filipino American, I really felt like I was never in tune with my Filipineness, like my Filipino background. My mom experienced a lot of racism growing up, and I think she really internalized that and really tried to make herself Americanized. So I was really only exposed to Filipino culture when I was around my grandparents. And I actually lost my father in a car accident when I was very young. And I think that had a lot to do with my internalization of who I was and who I didn't know who I was. And I think a lot of the journey that our four characters take is dealing with grief, dealing with the loss of their father, the creator, God Bathala, his 4 children are basically taking on the mantle of his legacy. They're absorbing themselves into their creative practices and ignoring the rest of the world around them and the reality of their emotions. Some of his children are taking on the era of like people pleasing and wanting to ignore their own emotions to make sure everybody else around them feels supported. Some of his children are taking on the like we have to make everything seem normal even though it's not normal. And then of course some of his children are taking on this anger and resentment for him leaving them. And I think these are all personal like moments I've had growing up and still have to this day as a 28-year-old with the grief I have from the loss of my father. And sometimes even I think some of the loss of like my connection to my culture. And like these were all like grieving this side of me that I'm now just rediscovering, not just rediscovering who I am with my father, but rediscovering who I get to be as a mixed race Filipina American. So like the piece is really centered around this theme of grief, and it's deeply personal, but my goal is to make it really universal as well to anyone who's maybe experienced these emotions before. And I'll just end this by saying in grief, no one's the good or bad guy. And my favorite part of Mahal is there's no protagonist versus antagonist. Everyone's trying to do their best. But just like in grief, our actions affect the people around us. So even though these deity children are in every right to feel these emotions, their actions and their emotions are creating a ripple effect through the universe and putting people at risk. And so then there's that part where you're like, how far do I take my personal emotions to the edge, to the point where I put other people in danger or at risk or hurt people around me? And how far do I pull them back? And that's really the ebb and flow of Mahal.
Wow, no, that's awesome. And I know that our audiences are going to be able to connect to that. Everyone has their own experiences with grief and all that, but I think what you've said just really kind of pulls it all together. And for you, right? Why don't you tell us a little bit about your character you play without, divulging too many details about the film itself? Let us know, what were your thoughts? What was that audition experience? When you got the notification, I imagine, and you're reading the background of this characters. Tell us a little bit about that.
So Hanan, she's the youngest. She's the baby. She processes the grief in the most stark way compared to her siblings, right? And her journey is really about taking care of her family and taking care of what's left of her family in the wake of that tragedy. And that's a lot to say for like, a young person to like put on themselves, but that's what had been thrust upon all 4 of them, right? When if you can imagine like 4 children grappling with the loss of their father, like they're going to do it in different ways. And in her manifestation of that is in trying to reach out to them. And I think that's a totally valid way to try to deal with grief. It's interesting. I feel, I don't know if this is like universal, but for me growing up, it's not that we weren't told not to express our feelings, but it was easier to just kind of move on whenever, something affected you, to just kind of compartmentalize it and keep moving forward. And like, those are lessons that you learn early and you learn often, and it takes a lifetime to undo. And I feel like that's not what Hanan does, but that's baked into like what's happening with her and her siblings. And I can like, for me, I could totally recognize that. And like that tension really resonated with me.
And you're right. I think it's a good generalization, because I think growing up, even for myself, we've grown up not to talk back, hold those emotions inside, right?
Yeah.
You're not allowed to. You just don't. And then you just, like you said, you just learn to move on, from there at that point. And you do, and those things get buried, and, things surface, eventually later on or so, but you just learn to move on from there. And what attracted you to this character? I mean, was it, again, when you were reading what the story was about, were you excited that this was Filipino inspired? What was it about this that truly inspired you or attracted you to it?
Oh, definitely. Definitely the fact that it was a Filipino-centric creation myth. Like I thought it was beautiful to me, that the idea that we could tell a story that completed the whole creation myth. You know, again, like I said earlier, we don't get to see stories like this about ourselves very often, and so I definitely jumped at the chance to like put out an audition for it. And what I loved about Hanan is that she has the grace to be able to confront her emotions in that way, in the way that like I personally I'm still working on as an adult. And I think it's lovely to be able to tap into that, even a little artificially through a character.
That's good. You have that connection, and that
Yeah.
just, you know, it shows when you have that connection in a character, whether it is animated or live. You can just tell, right? You're able to bring just that much more to the screen. So that's wonderful, right? And then Eileen, why don't you tell us a little bit about your character, Catalonan?
Sure. So she's the Catalonan, but she's also the narrator. And when I saw the audition, I was very excited, you know, for the same reasons Anne was saying. Just to have a project that's based on, inspired by Philippine mythology was just fantastic to me. Growing up in the States, I was a voracious reader. I just loved books. You know, that's why I got into audiobooks first before VO. And I would read a book, and I know it'd be fantasy or something, but you could kind of tell they were based on certain mythology, you know, and then I would delve more into that, and I would sort of think, well, where's the books on, you know, Philippine mythology,
Right.
you know,
We learn
and I
about Greek mythology and everything else. Right?
exactly, and my parents would fill me in a bit, but you know, there weren't groups yet, you know, like at UC Irvine, for example, or UCLA, where I went to. They were like just a little bit after me. So for me to find like culture in something else, is I had to really look for it, you know. I'm dating myself, but I couldn't Google it, you know. so for this coming across, you know, like, of course I'm going to audition, you know. And then I was just like, oh wow, this is a great role, because there's a character, and you know, I get to tell some of the story, so I get to see that. And then, but I love seeing what the gods and goddesses do, because I didn't know all of that story yet. And just the story about, you know, as Michaela said, about grief and emotions in the Filipino culture and the Filipino American culture, it's still very close. And I think this is really going to help a lot of people, just by the fact that there's different ways to deal with grief. And I actually lost an aunt and uncle recently. So going to the funeral just 2 weeks ago, I could see the different types of grief that the characters are experiencing at the mass, you know, at the viewing, at the services. And it helped a lot, really, I think, because I could say that person is experiencing that grief. And you know that, you know, I've took psychology and classes like that, so you kind of know that, but to have it experienced in a story that is related to your culture, where you actually go like, look at this, you know, this is directly related, and now I'm seeing it with all of these Filipino Americans, you know. So it's just a wonderful project, and I'm just so happy to be a part of it. I think I told, like, during recording, I even said, like, I'm going to tell everyone about it. you know, once I can. So.
Exactly. It's like everything is on the hush, right? Until you're given that green light, and then you can really start talking about it. So no, it's good. And you're right. You know, I mean, just watching the trailer itself, I think right away, you know, people can already just recognize just the characters and just have that connection. I mean, just seeing that brief trailer already pulls me in. I want to see what's going to happen. I want to see what's going to happen next. So very cool there. Now, for all of you, Philippine mythology, I imagine you guys learned a little bit more through this project. But what about, were there any favorites that you guys had? You know, it doesn't necessarily have to be your character, but what are some of your favorite mythological characters or deities that you guys learned about? And we can start with Travis, since we haven't heard from Travis, and put you on the spot first.
Oh, to be honest, I don't really have a good answer.
You're all good.
Yeah, I think that just the idea when Michaela came to me and talked to me about the project, the fact that we have these deities that I didn't even knew existed, I think proves a big problem for just I think all of us. I think that we have such a rich story and we have such a rich culture, is that I just think that we need more of it, and it's amazing to be of my age now and still be learning so much about our culture and about this heritage that has always been so strong with me. I mean, I grew up in a first generation Filipino household. I make sinigang, and me and my brothers make what we'll do is we'll come together and try to make our mom's food better than each other, and it never works.
I know mom's is always the best, no matter what we try to do.
Always the best. Yeah. And so yeah, I'm really just honored to be a part of this and to really learn so much more and to expand just my knowledge and understanding, and also to even know that our history as people goes so much further beyond King Philip. I think that's pretty cool.
Absolutely, well said. Let's see, and we'll go to you. Any favorite mythological deities?
Like growing up, like all I really knew was like my parents once told me about the tikbalang, and then and aswangs. I knew about aswangs. I was in a play about aswangs once, which was really rad. But I thought, like my knowledge of Filipino mythology is like a little kooky and a little spooky, which I think is rad. But I think it was also cool that we have this story of like this creation myth. Like we should have a creation myth. Everyone else has one.
We agree. And when you talk about aswang, that's what I grew up with. I mean, besides the Filipino movies, right? From back in the 90s. Even talking about, I remember coming together as family, we talk about the duende, right? Or when you walking by a tree, you have to say, I forget what you're supposed to say, but tabi-tabi po, right? Or something.
Yeah, something like that.
Because otherwise you get sick or what have you. But no, I love it. And then Eileen, how about you?
I'd have to go with the aswang because it's the one that they would just tell me the scary stories about, right? They're like, it's below, it's underneath the slats in the nipa hut. I'm like, oh, okay, now I'm scared.
Exactly. Yeah. Especially if you're pregnant and you're like, oh, you have to make sure you're safe and all that.
But I do love, like, I want to hear more about the non-scary mythology. So,
Absolutely. And then Michaela, how about you?
Oh, I mean, the beauty of the Philippines, right? And I know I'm speaking to like everyone who knows, like it's over 700 islands of over 100 cultures. Like it was never supposed to be a singular country. Like it's literally named after King Philip. And so a lot of the like struggle I had, because I was only exposed to my Catholic and Christian side, and I was like, there's got to be something here. Like there's got to be like history. And like I dug and dug and dug, and like the crazy part is that there's so many people arguing over which one's right or which one's better, and it's like the Visayans believe one thing, Ilocanos believe the Tagalogs, and like and rightfully so, they're all their own tribe of people who sometimes would war against each other, sometimes were peaceful with one another, and those stories mixed and blend in their own beautiful way, very similar to I think how all of our stories mix and blend in a really beautiful way as like like children of immigrants, children who come to America, we absorb a little American, we absorb a little Philippines. Like, so I think like for me, what I found really amazing about the creator myth that I found with Bathala was that, he created these 4 children, some say with a mortal woman that he fell in love with. Some say he just created them. Some say, Tala's stars get stolen by Apolaki, and that creates eclipses, right? Like there's so many beautiful nuances of what some people say. And that's the beauty of Reimagined as a series, is like, I don't need to be politically correct. I don't need to be exactly on point with it. It's a reimagining of Philippine mythology. It's a reimagining of like, okay, I know these characters existed and these were their kind of traits, but how can I reinterpret that as a Filipino American? How can I reinterpret that for like a modern day audience? And that's really what my goal was. And so I think my personal favorite is all of the ones that we go through, because they all mean so specific things to me. I think the one that maybe we haven't highlighted the most is like Mayari, who's the moon goddess. And I think her journey to me is the most it's the most poignant in its own way, because her anger and her resentment is really clear throughout the piece. And I think, like we've all been saying, sometimes we've been told to hold back those emotions. And I love that Mayari just like expresses those emotions so like boldly. And I think that there's something that like I hope everyone can walk away with that will be like, oh, this was my favorite, but I love them all. Like that's really my hope. Just like when you walk away from a Disney film or a Pixar film, like you have your favorite, but you love them all by the end.
Absolutely, that's true. And you're right, there are some other deities that are out there. Be great if maybe there's a volume 3 coming out or a part 2 to this. Good. All right, well, we're going to go ahead and take a pause for a 30-second sponsor break. All right, thank you, Tap Tap Send. So if you're just joining us, we have Michaela Ternasky-Holland, director, writer, and producer of Reimagined Volume II Mahal. We also have Yatco, voice of Hanan, who's the goddess of the dawn in the morning. We also have Eileen, Descallar, voice of Catalonan. And we also have Travis Atreo, who is a vocalist. So again, I'm now going to go ahead and ask just a few more questions, a little bit more about the project itself. How was it working together? Were you guys all virtual? Were there moments where you guys were able to come together in the same studio? I'm not sure who'd like to go ahead and answer that question. Michaela, we'll go to
I
you.
can jump in. So the beauty of like the world we live in is that you can really create a whole production without certain people even meeting each other. So fun fact, this is the first time like this whole team on the right side of me has ever met each other over Zoom from what I or from StreamYard. Like like the crazy part of this like whole like production is like I get to interact with each and every one of these incredible people working with me, not just the voiceover actors, not just the vocalists, but the amazing team of artists that hand drew, hand animated these incredible characters and environments. The producer, Julie Cavalier, who worked alongside me to make Mahal happen from day one when we had the idea, all the way to like, the film festival, PR, marketing, publicists, like these are all people I get to interact with, but we can be so efficient now with the production that like I literally had 1 to 2 sessions with the voiceover actors after they were hired. And then, they basically wait and see that what we produce. And Travis, we sent Travis like the music, we sent him the prompts and he made his magic happen. And I have to say like Travis's credit song makes me cry every time. Like, if anything, just watch Mahal for the credit song. Like it's
right there. It's touching. You're gonna okay.
Yeah. So that's really like the project. I mean, I would love to pass the mic over to my fellow panelists so they can talk a little bit more about like what they experienced working on the project. But that's just to give everyone like a framework to work under.
Sounds good. All right, and we'll start with Anne.
Yeah, I drove to a studio in LA and Michaela was over Zoom and it was just us and the engineer and I don't remember who else was on the call, but just going through the script together, like I didn't have the luxury of acting with my fellow actors, but through the magic of editing.
I love it, right? Isn't that great? Wonderful. And then here you are getting to meet them at least, face to face for first time. That's awesome. And then Eileen, how about you? How was it like working on this project?
Oh, same thing. So I went to a studio and I saw Michaela and Julie and an engineer remotely. And then there was just one person in the studio besides the person who let me in and everything. But I was prepared for that, because we were already in the Zoom world from pandemic. So it was still really fun to see them. And then I had known of Anne because she's fabulous and just the voiceover community. And so we interacted like not, just in the way that people have social media, et cetera. So it was just fun to see. And then as the project progressed and I started seeing more names, I I admit to looking them up and following them because they're fabulous.
Absolutely, right? Doesn't hurt. You should, especially if you haven't quite met them, doing a little bit of research. No, that's wonderful. And supporting each other. I'm sure you guys all support each other in your careers here too. So, and then Travis, how about you? Let us know how what was like working on this project.
Yeah, I'm not as talented as everyone else is with the voice acting. So I didn't have to go to a studio or anything. I actually have a home studio, and so I had recorded here. And yeah, Michaela had sent me the prompts and everything, and I was just really crossed my fingers hoping that they would work, my recordings. And so I'm so glad to hear that they work. But I think that is what's so cool about this is, I've been the joke about the pandemic for producers, and I'm sure voiceover actors, is we were like, wait, what pandemic? Because we're usually very like isolated and kind of doing our own thing. And so I think just it's so cool how efficient this whole production was without having to be in person. And I think it just kind of is a testament to not only like just the talent on this roster, but also I just want to shout out the leadership of Michaela. I think that her tenacity and her ability to get all of us, focused on this and wrangle together, I think is just huge. And so, yeah, go team.
That's awesome. And then Travis, while we have you on, tell us a little bit about the music in the film. How did it feel to add your vocals to it? I mean, Michaela was talking about the credits and the song that you were humming, the lullaby. Tell us a little bit about that.
Yeah, so the song is called Ili Ili Tulog Anay. I actually had never heard it before. Michaela had suggested it. And honestly, when I heard it, I it was a little bit like eerie and scary when I heard it. And when I started to sing it though, I think the vision really, her vision started to kind of come to fruition in my mind, really seeing it, because I think, the song, I read up some history about it, and from what I know, the song traditionally is sung about a mother who's leaving, and in this case Michaela decided to go in this direction, kind of towards what the storyline called for. And so yeah, it is, I would say it's haunting, but in a good way. I think a lot like grief, there's a great line that I read a long time ago. What is grief but love persevering? And I think through inflecting on this song, I thought about that a lot, how, we sing the songs of those that leave us, even if we don't have them anymore. And so I think, and my hope is that people would leave not only being inspired by an amazing story, so well told, but be able to keep it with them. And so that's just my hope for my vocals and for my participation.
Wonderful. And the song, is it half Tagalog, English, is a little bit of both? And have you sang Tagalog songs before?
So it's in, correct me if I'm wrong, Michaela, it's in Ilocano and Visayan. Is that right? And so I grew up doing karaoke. There's actually one song on my upcoming country album. It's a cover of this song called Harana by Apolaki ni Edgar. So that's probably the first record that I've actually sung. Actually, this is the first one that I've released, is releasing. So yeah, I'm so honored.
Love that song. Love Apolaki ni Edgar. So looking forward to hearing that. So now for Anne and Eileen, how did you prep for your characters? Was there anything specific that you had to do? And we can start with Anne.
For me, it was really just kind of doing like the actor's homework, who is this character? Like what does she hold important to her? What is important to her in those moments in the film? And kind of just like sitting with that and letting that resonate with me. A certain percentage of that had been done in the audition, right? And then even after all that time had passed, once we walked into the studio, there was still a collaboration happening to try to dial it in even further and really hone in on what is this voice, who is this girl, and how is she achieving her goals in the film. So, there was a certain amount of preparation, but it's at the end of the day, it's really as much preparation as I can do. The moment I set foot into the booth, like I have to be ready to throw as much of it away as possible.
Absolutely. And then Eileen, as for you, right, as the narrator, did you, were there, I'm not sure if you speak, Tagalog or any of the other dialects. Did you have to learn that, or was that easy for you to did the words come easy to you?
No, they didn't. But so I know a little bit, right? And I knew a lot more than my parents thought I did, so I could hear all this stuff. So the prep was definitely where I went back and kind of reviewed things. I had been taking a Tagalog class already. It wasn't like a university level one, but that was nice. And then just to kind of get more into the world and know what my character is, because she's a narrator, but I'm also a character. So that was really fun to kind of do both. And then, as Anne said, like all the prep, it comes down to, even though I have an audition and, Michaela liked it, thankfully, so that's a guideline. But when you come in there, then it's really a collaboration. And Michaela's just a wonderful director, and Julie gave good feedback too. So it was definitely, here is where we're at, And then I did get the pronunciations down, but it was like, I'll do right by my parents. But they're both from one of the reasons it was hard for me to learn was because my mom spoke primarily Tagalog and my dad speaks Visayan. So they're very different. Yeah, they're very different. And so when I was little and I would try to learn, and I'd say, how do you say this? It would become an argument. So
well, imagine.
Yeah. And of course, all the extra rules, right? So my mom would be like, well, if it's this person, you should try to speak very properly. So I think after a while, it was just a lot for me to handle until my cousins and other relatives came over, and then I could understand more. But being the eldest and the eldest grandkid in America until many, many years later, it was definitely like, oh my gosh, this too much language overload. Yeah.
Exactly. I mean, you think that English is hard, right? People say English is a hard language to learn. Well, you come to Tagalog, and again, all the different dialects, that do make up the Philippines. It's how you say it, right? Where's that emphasis on, and it can take on a whole completely different meaning. So, kudos to you guys to be able to do the research, do the practice, and just nail it. Okay, well, let's see. I know we've only got a few more minutes left for this interview. And so, Michaela, this film is making its world premiere at the Tribeca Film Festival. What was that process like? We're super excited for you guys because that's coming around, June 7th, right? A couple weeks. All right.
Yeah. So we're one of 13 projects in the Tribeca Immersive category. Usually Tribeca has a much bigger lineup, so I was really surprised to see how small the Tribeca Immersive lineup is this year. There are two separate categories within Tribeca Immersive. There is the competition category, which is for directors who are well known in the VR industry and have probably directed at least 3 or 4 VR projects at this point. And then there's the new voices category, which is what Mahal is in. And it's really first and second time directors in the VR space. For me, I've been a co-creator, I've been a producer many times, but this is really like my first step into like the directorial like debut, as they say. And the process to get to Tribeca, was always a dream. And I am a big believer in when I have a team of people, I like to share that dream with them. I don't think I ever shared it with the voiceover cast just because we only have such limited time. Like we only have 1 hour. And the last thing I want to do is get their hopes up that a project they spend an hour on is going to be at Tribeca in like 6 months. And so, but at least with my like artist team and my production team, like the people I was really with every day, like giving feedback to and looking at artwork and talking about camera movement and framing. And then, the people that were really spending like hours on this project, I was like, the dream is to go to Tribeca. And they were like, wow, really? And I was like, yeah, but we got to get it done by this date. And they're like, okay. So, and in that way, when you share a collective dream, I think everyone puts like their dream into that hat of like this dream to go to Tribeca. And so the process really, beyond just submitting the Tribeca application, was to make sure the project was ready in time to submit something to Tribeca. And we really submitted like the tiniest 2.5-minute video for this project as a representative of the project, to be like, this is what we're working on, we hope you like it. And like I remember like 3 months later getting the call being like, okay, but what about the rest of the film? What are you thinking about that? I was like, oh, we have something to show you, but it's not final, but here's what we've been working on. And there was the rest of the film, and it wasn't fully animated quite yet. The sound design wasn't fully in yet. All the voiceover was in. The credit song wasn't in there quite yet. But I was like, here's like the story. Like, here's where you can really see the art. The first thing we submitted was a vertical slice, which is just really so they can see the art style and they can see the animation style. But this was really the representative of the narrative. And they were all like, wow, this is great. Thank you so much. We'll come back to you in a few weeks. And like, I remember taking a call with the Tribeca production team, because Tribeca Immersive isn't just a traditional film. Like, it's actually an exhibit hall. So I also had to put together a installation plan. I had to be like, if you give me 6 feet by 6 feet of space, here's how I will use it. Here's where I would set up the chairs. Here's how I would use the artwork on the walls. This is a bit of a
full
sneak
plan.
peek.
I mean, it's a huge proposal. Okay. Wow.
And here's a sneak peek for my amazing cast. Like, here's where I put the figurines of the villagers. Here's where I'd put the figurines of the deities. And these are really like how I would make people enter into the story world. So I wasn't just pitching the project that I had been working on a year. I was also pitching the physicality of the space and how I'll use the space as like an art exhibit. And so I remember having that call with Tribeca Production, and they were like, well, great, so we'll be in touch. And I was like, what does that mean? Like, just send the official acceptance. Like, don't say we'll be in touch. Like every actor, right? Who's like, did I get the job or not? Like, I was that like director, like sweating in my seat. And so yeah. And so a few weeks later, we got the official acceptance. And I think it was nothing but pure joy to be able to share that with finally the voiceover actors. I think Travis was aware that we had submitted and gotten accepted. Like, it was a full team celebration. And this is no small feat. Like, there's a lot of film festivals in the world, but there's only so many festivals that showcase VR projects. And we really have what we call like the big three here in the US. There's Sundance, there's South by Southwest, and there's Tribeca. And this year, Sundance didn't even have a New Frontier. So Sundance this year didn't even show VR. So the fact that we are like one of the 3, if not 2 festivals in the US that to the worldwide stage, like the best of the best of VR come forth, like this is a big deal, right? Like, it's a really huge deal.
Super exciting too. Yeah. And so, okay, so you said you submitted a 2.5-minute, trailer, if you will, preview. So the feature wasn't even completed at that point. And so was that 6 months prior, or was this a year ago that you had to submit?
I submitted to Tribeca, I believe, in March. So it was just a few months ago. I'm trying to recall. My brain's a little foggy. That's a lie. I found out in March. January. I submitted the application in January. Oh, wow. Yeah, I submitted the application in January.
I'm sure these last 6 months, 5 months have been just a whirlwind. So I'll get there. No, that's wonderful. Now, what do you want our viewers to walk away with? Now that they've seen the trailer, right, for it. For those who are able to make it to the Tribeca Film Festival, what do you want your viewers to walk away with after they watch the film?
I think the highest compliment to receive on this project is that I hope they walk away feeling everybody's contribution, right? Like, this isn't a one-person show. If it was, I'd be like, a one-person show. Like, this is really a team effort. And like, I have to give a huge shout out. Like, Eileen's character has the most Tagalog in it, like the most. And like, Eileen absolutely nailed it. Like, Anne's character, half the time is just like emoting and has no lines. And like, Anne had to tell like a whole storyline basically emoting with like this much lines. Like Travis like literally was like, sure, send me the music, like I'll figure out what I'll do, and like sent back like perfect takes. Like this is truly like a collaboration. Like this is truly like an effort of everybody involved. And so my hope is like they walk away and they're like, you must have had an amazing team. And like all I can say is like, yes, I did. Like I couldn't have done this by myself. And the second highest compliment I think to receive, or the second like best thing, would be I only had 20 minutes with these characters because the piece is only 20 minutes long.
Right. Mm-hmm.
But I felt and understood them, and I felt connected to them, and I felt and I saw myself in them in some way, shape, or form, or I have empathy for them or compassion for them. Like that would be like one of the highest honors as well, is to say like, you know, I only have so much time to build these people up and move them through a full narrative arc, top, middle, end. And like, if we accomplished like that sense of belonging, whether you're Filipino or not Filipino in this project, like that would be amazing.
Absolutely. And that's what's great about Tribeca. It's international. You have people all walks of life, all backgrounds, cultural backgrounds. And so to have this type of exposure to the Filipino culture and our history of mythology, it's just wonderful. Again, you're kind of setting the bar there, right? And we love it. And we're so proud of you guys in this huge accomplishment of yours. Now, is there room for volume 3, or have you guys even begun thinking about a volume 3 at Reimagined?
Yeah, so the Reimagined series is actually an anthology series, so similar to like a Love, Death, and Robots or a Black Mirror or like a Star Wars Visions, where like you take an idea and then you let that idea get interpreted through many different types of artists, many different types of storytellers, and many different points of view. And so volume 1, Nisa, was actually about a Brothers Grimm fairy tale getting retold. And it was about the boy who went forth to learn fear, but it was centered around a female protagonist and heroine. And it's very a la the hero's journey. And the stylization is impressionist and expressionist. Volume 2, Mahal, and I'm not the director of that project. Every single episode and volume has a new female director, a new female producer. So the idea is like an anthology series that's directed and produced by women who want to see their cultures tell story or want to see their stories be told a different way. And so my directorial volume 2 is Mahal, about Filipino mythology. Volume 3 is actually being directed by a woman named Melissa Joyner, who identifies as Black and is a retelling of a Southern Nigerian folk tale. And the working title of it is Young Thing, and it is the retelling of the folk tale called A Woman with Two Skins. And I will leave you with that as a sneak peek into that volume 3. So that is the Reimagined series. I've been told many times that Mahal should be a spin-off as its own like Disney Plus series or something.
Absolutely. I definitely
And that would be amazing.
That would be wonderful. And just the title alone, Mahal, I love it. You know, I mean, amazing, super creative. And I know we're almost at time here. So for those of you who've joined us, if you guys have any questions, please go ahead and put them in the chat so we can ask this team here. And then lastly, for all of you, where can we find you on social media? Let's see, Travis, we'll start with you. Let us know your social media.
Yeah, you can just find me on everything at Travis Atreo on YouTube, Spotify, kind of Instagram. Yeah, you can totally find me there.
And when is your album coming out? You've got this country album that's going to be released, right?
Yeah, absolutely. Thanks for asking. We're going to be releasing all the songs in successive weeks, so that's coming out starting July, and then the whole album will drop in September.
So we'd love to have you back here to do that release. We'll hear a couple of your songs and tracks. So good luck to you on all of that in your future projects. Let's see, Eileen, how about you? Where can we find you on social media?
I'm on Instagram as Eileen Descallar, on Twitter, Eileen D Voice, and I'm on Clubhouse still as Eileen D. And then I have a couple of projects, live action dubbing and animated dubbing. That will be released sometime. They're under NDA.
Nice. I was gonna say, she can't give us too much information, and that's okay. We'll definitely keep our eyes out open for that. So you guys make sure you follow Eileen if you want to hear more about that. And then, of course, Anne, let us know about you too.
Yeah, you can follow me on literally all the socials, Twitter, Instagram, TikTok, Twitch. I think I have a YouTube channel, and Yatco. I kept it very simple. But I stream video games on Twitch every once in a while. It'll be another week and a half before I stream again because I'm going to the Philippines for a convention. I'll be at Conquest this upcoming weekend, and it's my birthday.
Woohoo. Oh man, celebrating a birthday in the Philippines?
Yeah.
Man,
It's going to be super rad. So I'm excited.
Awesome. And then Michaela, how about you?
Yeah, so my website is my name, Michaela, Ternasky-Holland.com. You are welcome to check out some of my past VR work on there. If you want to follow the project, reimaginedvr.com is the anthology series. For me, you can find me on Instagram at Michaela Ternasky-Holland. My name is too long for Twitter, so it's at I'm Michaela TH. If you would like to follow the project, it is all at Reimagined VR on Instagram and Twitter. I am open on the DMs, so if you have any more questions about Mahal or if you want to learn anything about VR, like I always love bringing people into this storytelling medium. Always love, talking to people who are interested in the work that I'm doing. And so, yeah, feel free to reach out to me at any time. The next few weeks might be a little busy for me because I'm at Tribeca, but I will definitely get back to you.
Absolutely. And then I think I saw that you do guest speaking as well, right? If folks are interested in having you come to their companies' events. No, that's wonderful. All right. Well, thank you all again. I know, Michaela, it's late for you. You're out on the East Coast. But thank you all so much for, spending your evening with us, telling us a little bit about who you are, about this amazing animated VR feature, which will, again, be featured at the Tribeca Film Festival. So that's going to be in the New York area from June 7 to 18. And if you are there and you do purchase tickets, if I'm not mistaken, your tickets also include access to the immersive and games project area too, correct?
For the whole day. So one $50 ticket gives you an all-access day pass to the Tribeca Immersive Exhibition, which is 13 incredible projects, and the games, which I believe is like 8 or 10 projects.
Oh, how fun and exciting. So yeah, if you guys are out there, make sure you buy your ticket. You've got it's showing from June 9th through 18th or from the 7th through the 18th?
From the 7th through the 17th.
17th, all right, perfect.
At the Spring Studios, which is just like the main festival hub.
Awesome. All right. So again, and thank you all again. Appreciate your time. And thank you to our sponsor, TapTapSend. Again, looking to send money to the Philippines, TapTapSend has you covered. No fees, great rates, and fast transfers. Download
and can we just
app.
give it up for Jen?
Oh my God, you guys are
yes!
kind. Way too kind. Thank you. You guys are amazing and such a fun group of panelists to connect with. So thank you guys. All right, with that said, everyone have a great evening, and thank you all for joining us this evening for our Creative Spotlight. Until next time, have a wonderful week. Thank you.
This episode was brought to you by TapTapSend. Looking to send money to the Philippines? Zero fees, great rates, and fast transfers to GCash, Cebuana, and most local banks. Download TapTapSend from your app store and use the code SoCal and get a $20 bonus on your first transaction to the Philippines.